This episode of the Jon Kiper Show is an interview with our friend Matt Beam, who lives in Claremont, New Hampshire, and has worked in the Claremont school system. We met him during the last campaign. He was a big supporter, and I'm really happy to do this interview. Here we go. You grew up in Claremont, right?
Yes, born and raised in Claremont. So when I was in school, the big thing that was going on was that we had to renovate the high school because at that point, because it got renovated in 2014, just after I had graduated. But at that point, they had to renovate the high school because the building was so old that we were going to lose accreditation in the town. Like, John, I can remember being a student at Stevens High School and shaking the walls and and the walls were shaking because when I was there, the building was so old. So that was the big stuff thing when I was in school, and we actually had a vote into the first renovation when I was in school. I think it might have been like 2010, that area, and the public voted down by one vote, so we didn't get the renovation then. And then they did it in 2014 because we were going to lose accreditation, which Claremont had lost its accreditation in the 90s, I think, or in the past that had happened. So that was the big thing that was going on when I was in school in Claremont, was that Stevens High School, and then it got renovated and the building's in much better shape now.
Yeah.
But that was the big thing that was going on when I was in school, from what I remember.
Yeah. So there wasn't much talk about the Claremont lawsuit and everything like that.
No, but I do remember hearing when that was going on. I do remember hearing a lot of talk about how the school doesn't have even then the property taxes they're too high, and like the taxpayers don't have the money to fund a new high school. I remember that talk a lot. So I think that is connected with the obviously I don't remember hearing about the lawsuit until I got more involved in politics as I got older and I got educated about it. But it's always been a fight in Claremont, though, like to scrap for education dollars from the state.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
What was your experience like working there?
My experience working in the Claremont School District. So I worked in the Claremont School District for 7 years, 6 years as a para, and 1 year as a teacher. And I was president of the professional union for 3 years, and I actually got the paras hooked up with the Teamsters union because the wages were like, I think when I started as a para, which was like 2017, I was like $12 an hour.
Yeah,
as a para, and so obviously the wages were low. I will say the administration was always incredibly dysfunctional. In the Claremont School District, and specifically the SAU was always incredibly dysfunctional. You know, I think just in my time there for 7 years, I think I went through three different superintendents, and one interim. So like the power was always moving, and the quality of people who were taking that post didn't seem to me that we were getting much from our superintendent or from the SAU at all times. So that was kind of, at the same time, it's my hometown. I love Claremont. I still coaching football for Stevens, even though I'm teaching in Windsor, Vermont now. So I obviously have I love the town very deeply. And there was obviously that component of it, but I was always discouraged by just the leadership, specifically from the superintendent's office.
Yeah, that's interesting because Newmarket, we built a new school in 2010 because our school was also going to be condemned or whatever by Department of Education.
Yeah.
They were going to lose accreditation because there was like asbestos in the ceiling or something. It took us forever to get the funding. I mean, it took like years of begging the voters, and it kept getting voted down, the different school plans. And it's interesting because we also went through a number of different superintendents over the last 10 or so years, and it was always hard to really understand why they were coming and going, because, the school board would say, oh, we can't talk about it. It's a, personnel issue. So it just left a
Uh-huh.
lot of speculation for people on the outside saying like,
Mhm.
is there some certain like I always kind of assumed there must be someone that was hard to work with, a principal or something, but it was just so hard to really understand the dynamics. And like our SAU is just literally the Newmarket High School and the Newmarket High School Middle School and the Newmarket Elementary School. So it's it's two schools, and we're like, why can't we hang on to a superintendent for more than a year or two? It's really been a mystery. But I always kind of felt and when we were doing the process of renovating the school before that, they were also talking about merging with other school districts. And it always just seemed to me that the whole conversation was happening without really any involvement from the state. Like they didn't really.
I know. It's truly unbelievable to me, and I'm seeing this now in contrast working in Vermont. While they have their own issues they're going through or their own consolidation proposal right now, but just the state is just they're supportive. What they have for their funding. It's not based off like property taxes. It's a pooling system, so
Yeah,
like everybody pools their property taxes, and like regardless of how the consolidation works out, that's just a more equitable, way more equitable funding system
yeah,
than what we have in New Hampshire, where it's just based off local property taxes.
yeah,
Um, and it sounds like Newmarket has some of the same struggles, and I just think with going through the Claremont situation, and obviously I'm a taxpayer in Claremont. I live in Claremont, so I've been able to take on a different kind of role when trying to like navigate through these meetings now that I'm not a employee anymore. And it's just astounding that the state thinks that they don't have responsibility for what's happening in Claremont, like, and for state legislators to be like, yeah, we don't want to set a precedent, by helping Claremont. I just think what I don't understand, like it's part of the state, like in Vermont, if my school district in Vermont, like this happened, like the state would take it over and like fix it and then like leave, like that. You know what I mean? So
yeah.
I found it pretty incredible that the state of New Hampshire just thinks that, oh, we don't have a responsibility to help a school district that's literally in a giant deficit, and is cutting staff and all this stuff. It's quite remarkable,
Yeah.
in a not a good way. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, I think most people don't think about this very much about how the schools get funded and the
Yeah.
fact that, I mean, because there's another argument to be made too that the federal government is not providing enough school funding. I mean, when you look at the formula,
Yes.
I think it's maybe 10 or 20% of the budget. And we have a lot of these unfunded, and you probably know about this, unfunded mandates with special education that seem like they need funding of their own
Yeah.
source. And I think more people should question that, especially with the billions that we spend on the military, that
Yeah.
we
Of
aren't
course.
able to
So
better
with special,
fund our own schools.
yeah. So with special education, like, so all of those laws are provided by the federal government specifically for special ed
Yeah,
because of the IDEA. The IDE now that's all being just destroyed right now by the
yeah,
current. And I'll be upfront about that. Like, I'm already kind of seeing things like, so it's not going to affect direct staffing like in schools, but what it's going to affect is like the people who oversee IEPs from the federal government and make those regulations and those laws for special, like, which is important to make sure that kids have an adequate education because they're entitled to one. Um, the people to do those that keep track and make sure you're doing what you're supposed to do aren't there anymore, essentially.
yeah.
So it's kind of dire situation because when it comes to special education, they're the ones that make all the rules, and if they're an IEP is a federal document, like so yeah,
So you're
it's
saying
pretty
there's going
crazy.
to be no one to enforce the IEPs
Yeah,
if a school
yeah,
district is just ignoring it or
100%. That's
hmm,
exactly what I'm saying because
yeah,
of what's going on at the Department of Education
yeah,
federally, because those
yeah.
are the people who oversee that stuff.
Have
So
you
like,
seen any change in the day-to-day operation of special ed since Trump
not
took over?
um not in the school yet.
Yeah,
Maybe I think Vermont, I'm a little more protected
Because they have more
Uh,
state funding or
yeah,
more.
yeah,
Yeah.
they have a lot more state funding. But I do think what I am going to start seeing is just like, the special ed audits, and like when they come through, like that's not going to happen anymore because there's physically nobody doing those jobs anymore because the federal special education, has been failed essentially.
Yeah. Yeah.
Which, yeah, so that will affect, and I think it'll take some time. I'm also wondering, like some special ed um, like positions are federal funded, like not all of them. Like mine's not because I'm a teacher, so I'm in their budget. But so it's going to affect some of the stuff like that too, like in grants and all that. Like, yeah, and like this decision, I don't know if you saw, I got to speak out on this decision that they made to consider pretty much all the helping professions as non-professional degrees. Did you see that?
I did.
Uh,
I didn't fully I don't quite understand. I mean, I obviously don't understand the justification, but so the implications are that you can't get federal loans for those
yeah.
degrees. Is
Well,
that true?
they're capped.
They're capped. Sorry, that's what I meant. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, that's exactly what it means. Not only is it like incredibly insulting because someone who's gone through those degrees to hear that from the federal government, but the big thing is that it's capped, and people who want to go into nursing or teaching or they're not going to get nearly as much help from the federal government as they would starting in July. So
Yeah, that's wild. I mean, I
yeah,
think that pretty quickly we'll start to see the negative downstream effects of a lot of this stuff, which we're not seeing now. We haven't
no,
seen, there hasn't been enough time
mhm,
for us to see
right.
how bad things under Trump can get. And I mean,
Although I do think we're starting to see it a little bit in the economy.
oh yeah, for sure.
Yeah,
Definitely.
and the ICE stuff, what ICE is doing. We see that every day, on and I think between those two things, I think there are some like real world things
Oh
going.
yeah.
Like, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
I would say more just into education
Oh yeah,
department
for sure.
stuff that we won't
Yeah,
really see that until it's going to take a little while for the effects to be fully
for sure.
uh, you know, observable, I guess, especially with the education funding. Because, you wonder if, or at least hope that maybe the schools would find a way to fund these programs anyway. I mean, the stuff with the nursing is particularly, I find crazy just
It's really
because
crazy.
we need desperately people in the
Yeah,
medical profession with our aging
yeah,
population in New Hampshire. We need more
yeah, yeah.
nurses, more LNAs.
Oh,
And
yeah.
you think so? It's kind of funny. My son's mother is an LNA, and she's done some of the certifications to be a little bit to move up, more money and more responsibility. But there's one more certification she wants to do, but it's for some reason the only place to do it is like in Nashua, so it's like an hour drive. And the funny part is she has to, it's like I think she said it's 11-month course, but her work will pay for it, but she has to work like I think at least 2 1 hours still, but then go to school full time and then still somehow pay all of her bills. But the stupid thing is like this is something that we need. Like we need more
Yeah,
people to go to school for this
you know,
and to be more trained in the medical taking care of elderly
100%.
people. So the whole system just seems pretty broken from
5
that
years ago
perspective.
when COVID was going on, they were like we were saying they were heroes.
Yeah,
I,
right.
even me being a teacher and but like the nursing, it was like the one that really got me too. I was like, nursing, like really, like you know what I
Well,
mean? Like,
it's so stupid because it's clearly
yeah,
some person in the Trump administration, maybe it's even Trump, who literally is like, those sound like girl jobs. You know what I mean? Like it's so stupid
yep.
because it's clearly someone
It's
who's
like
like,
no,
oh, all the nurses are women, all the teachers are women, and they shouldn't be
yep.
considered professionals. And it's just like the misogyny is so
No, that's
obvious.
exactly what I thought, John. That's the first thing that I thought, and then I looked at the numbers, and it's like, okay, so it's 76% women in those jobs,
Yeah,
and like then I just think about how yeah, it's just it's what Trump believes. They're women, like they
yeah,
shouldn't. The misogyny is unbelievable. It
yeah.
really, it really is. I think it's it's a couple things. It's the misogyny and that they're helping professions. You know what I mean? They're not like making money,
Yeah.
corporate. They're
Yeah.
not a business degree.
Yeah.
You're a businessman. That's professional. And so I think that's the two things there. And those are mostly men-led jobs, men
Yeah.
careers
Yeah.
so no, that was the first thing I thought of. And then I got the exact percentage, which is 76%, which sounds about right, being someone who's male in the social services
Yeah.
realm. But I was like, it's just, these are the jobs that women do. And, the misogyny is unbelievable.
Yeah. I just
Yeah.
looked it up, and the federal government only provides New Hampshire. It's less than 9% of the education funding. I thought it was actually higher than that because I thought that
I didn't know it was that
there was
low.
money coming in some other ways, but it's wild. Yeah, because my son had Title I help with reading when he was in first grade, and it helped a lot. His reading got way better,
Mm-hmm.
and it was interesting because we had a little introduction to the whole sort of concept at the beginning of the school year, and they said it's the at least it was, probably not anymore, but I think it was like the biggest social program, is standalone social program that the federal government invests in is Title I reading,
Mm-hmm.
because it's just a massive
Yes.
program because it's super effective,
Well,
and was for
yeah.
my son, and I think that's the kind of stuff that people don't directly see. They don't think about who funds it, they don't think about how it works, and that's where,
That's federally funded.
yeah, I think that's where we're going
Yeah.
to have some problems. I don't know if you saw
You're
this.
absolutely, absolutely
Mississippi
correct.
Mississippi did a really interesting thing recently where over the last 5 or so years, I'm not sure when they started this, but Mississippi used to be ranked like 44 or 45 out of 50 for education.
Yep.
And they're now 16th, I think. And they did it. It's really interesting. They did it by hyper focusing basically on reading comprehension in third and fourth grade. And this is interesting. They basically said if your kid can't read to a certain level by third grade, they're going to have to repeat the year. And they were
Yeah.
really strict about it. And it
Mm-hmm.
forced the parents to
Mm-hmm.
be more involved because the parents didn't want to hold the kids back. So they only had to hold kids back like the first year. All the parents got
Mm-hmm.
the message, worked with their kids to read better. And I just thought it was interesting because it
Yeah.
didn't cost them really any money. There was just a change in the
Philosophy.
totally.
Yeah. I would agree with something like that. You know what I mean? I think there's a lot of things that happen in school sometimes where we're just trying to like make everybody happy and not make tough decisions
Yeah.
sometimes. You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
there's sometimes when I've left meetings where I'm just like, yeah, we got through the meeting and we're cool, but like, so I think education is important, right? We need to make sure that we make it having those tough conversations and doing what will benefit the child in the long run to be
Yeah.
successful. That
I know. I think it's a little I mean it's not funny, but we're seeing now how vital education is and in-person education because of what this sort of experiment we ran during COVID. Because I mean, I was very skeptical when they were like, all right, we're going to, particularly like preschool, we're going to do preschool or kindergarten on an iPad. I'm like,
you can't.
this is the worst idea ever. And then you fast forward 4 or 5 years. And it's kind of ironic to me that some of the teachers are like, oh, the kids are obsessed with screens. They're on screens all the time. And it's like, well, we spent several years using screens as the only form of education.
This is literally how they were brought up, and we trained their brains. That is what they did. And so I did a project in college about mine was focused on video games, but it's the same type of idea and about what it in the brain. And you're right. We totally, first of all, the remote learning. I think we had to do what we had to do at the time.
Yeah,
but the idea
we didn't know. Obviously, no one knew what they were doing.
Yeah.
We're making it up,
Yeah.
but we did an experiment.
Yeah, but people thought, but it just didn't go well. Clearly,
Yeah,
and it did. I thought at the time provide an example of like, hey, this is why we need to fund our schools, and this is why we need, to value teachers because what they do really is, it can't be done by a computer. You can't AI it.
no,
Yeah. So, Yeah. Can I ask you a question?
Sure.
Um, I'm really excited about how you've kind of, because one of the things that I think the Democrats need to work on in general is messaging. I
Yeah.
think that their messaging is bad, and like,
I
you
think you
know,
could argue that's the only thing they need to work on in some ways
yeah,
because it's like the whole thing.
yeah, messaging and like fighting for working people is what I
Yeah.
think that's what those are the two big things I
Well,
think
even
Democrats.
messaging that they are fighting for working people, you
Yeah,
know?
but I love your message of community first economics. I just
Thank
love
you.
how you put that into like a concept. You know what I mean? And like, we have trickle down economics. Well, community first economics. What would be so? I didn't, maybe I'm sure you've, but what would be like on day one? You're the governor, and you want to implement an agenda of community first economics. What's the first thing you do? What's the first thing you look at?
Honestly, the first thing I really want to try to tackle is homelessness. I feel like if you were to make like a
Great
hierarchy of
answer.
needs for the state and like
Yeah.
who is in need of the most like support right now, I would say it's homeless people, children in foster care, any child that is in any way being, in the state custody through YDC
Hmm.
or any sort of
Hmm.
world where, I think we got to make sure that all those children, because of the YDC abuse cases, we really need to double our efforts in making sure that anyone in state custody, particularly children, are being treated well.
Hmm.
But then, I really want to get into some like creative solutions on homelessness that are practical. Little stuff like, not little, but, things like converting our trade schools to build tiny homes. I think that would be a really great way.
Interesting idea. I've never heard that idea. That's
They've
great.
uh, they've done it. They've done it some
Yeah.
states. They did it in Aspen, Colorado, and they've done it in Maine with actually the prison
Hmm.
system and having people in prison study the trades, and while they're studying their trades, they're building tiny homes for I think in the main program is focusing on veterans, but obviously, a lot of veterans are
Hmm.
homeless, but there's a lot of homeless people as well. I
Hmm.
would like to really focus on that area because I think that it's something that people just want to see happen, and I want to see it
Hmm.
happen. And I think that we really just need to get everyone focused on the same goal, and everyone that's working for those goals to be working in together. And
Yeah.
then and I mean I
You want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together.
yeah, totally. That's a good line. I like that.
Yeah. Yeah. It's one of my favorites.
Yeah, and basically, start with obviously like Manchester, Concord, Nashville, where the problem is probably
Yeah.
the,
You got to
the
go
most
the biggest.
the
Yeah.
biggest, and
Yeah.
just whatever we're going to do, whether it be convert a hotel, find some old
Wow.
office buildings that we could convert
Yeah.
into single room occupants.
I love it.
And I think obviously we're going to need a lot of different strategies, and we're going to have to try stuff. Stuff's not going to work. We got to try something else. We got to look at what has worked. I
Right.
think you can look at California and it's like they threw billions of dollars at the problem, and their results were not great. It was mixed
Right.
at best.
No, you can't
So
just throw money at it. You got to do it strategically.
yeah, totally. And
Yeah.
there's
Yeah.
some complications people don't quite understand where there's some people that have been homeless for so long that getting them into housing is actually more difficult than you would think because they're just not comfortable in an apartment
Oh,
setting. Some of them have
for sure.
abandoned that. So
For sure.
I think we might have to, as a preliminary step, allow some state sanctioned campground areas. I don't see why that is so controversial.
I
I
don't see
think
why it is either.
having places where if someone's living in an RV or their car where they could park and there's,
Yeah.
services, trash, showers, bathrooms. And then to me, it's like, you work up the hierarchy of needs. And I
Yeah.
think,
I love
it's
it.
once we get working on the homelessness problem, a big thing I think we'll do first term is legalize cannabis, just because it's low hanging fruit. Everybody wants it to happen.
It's long overdue
Yeah,
behind
and so
everybody
I
else.
think
Yeah.
I'm hoping that what we can do is legalize cannabis and use at least some of the revenue there for housing, so that those two work
Yep.
together. Um, I know what it's
That
going
is
to
one
take.
thing that I wish more states like when a lot of states were legalizing pot, like I wish that more states there was more we were more strategic in where the revenue went, like where the tax revenue went.
Yeah.
And one thing I've seen in some of these states is it's getting sucked up by the corporations. And I mean, yeah. And I'm not a fan of that. One thing I did wanted to ask you was, I was a big supporter. So I'm a member of the Democratic Socialists of America. I consider myself a Democratic Socialist, and was a big supporter of Mamdani. And
Yeah.
one of his ideas that I really like is the community health. I can't remember what his wording was, but what exactly he's calling it. But it's like the community health, like to pair with the police and like for people that are in crisis, like you said, like a social worker or mental
Yeah.
health clinician. I can't remember what he's calling it, but it's like community health, new agency almost.
Yeah.
I really like that idea. I think cops should be doing cop work, you know what I mean, and not necessarily intervention for people in crisis.
Yeah.
So I was wondering if you would support something like that.
Yeah, we actually already do that in New Hampshire, and
Yeah.
to a degree. I don't know how extensive
My vision would be expanded.
Yeah,
Yeah.
my girlfriend is a therapist, so she's gotten one of her previous jobs was basically going out on these emergency calls with the police, and so I mean, a lot of it is forming relationships between the mental health community and the police, because what ends up
Sure.
happening is once the police sort of know who they're looking out for, or like who they're interacting with and what their sort of, I don't want to say default, but what their what their symptoms might look like, it ends up being a much safer situation. I had a neighbor who had schizophrenia, and sometimes he was normally pretty well medicated and was living alone, was fine, but there was one time where he was in the backyard like trying to burn some ants, and I with a gas can right next to a 250-pound propane tank, and I got kind of freaked out, and I called the
Yeah.
police. I didn't call 911. I just called like the normal
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
line. And it was really funny because the dispatcher was like, "Let me put you through to one of the police on duty." And the police on duty was like, "Oh yeah, I know who you're talking about. Like, we'll go take care of it." But it was like they weren't going to go in guns blazing because they knew
Right.
this person and they knew the situation. They knew this person was not really a dangerous person, just sometimes acted irrationally. And that had to do with the fact that that police officer I know lived in town. And so, was part of the community. And I think that is really important, is like, and it goes with the housing crisis too, because a lot of police officers can't afford to live in the towns that they're policing, which then you have this, division. Like our chief of police lives right downtown and is walking around a lot with his family and
Right.
his grandchild.
Right.
And it makes me feel a lot better, and that we're in a like community relationship with the police in a way that's, I think, just better for everyone, because then the police know that they're not like seen as, a threat to people, and they're just part of
Exactly.
the
Yeah.
community. I mean, literally having coffee with us, I think, just is important to like maintain that sort of relationship. So I
100%.
think any efforts to do that are good. And I think any ways that we can de-escalate situations with people with mental illness are really important. How many people do you think are part of the DSA? Have you been to any of their meetings?
So I've been to not like their national chapter. I've been to the Upper Valley DSA, which is like the one for this. So I've been to a couple meetings there. I have not been. I don't know how many. I could probably look it up and find out how many members. But there's about maybe 50 people in our like in our where we do our planning and stuff in our group. There's about 50 people in there. So
Do you go to the meetings regularly, or is it?
I do what I can. I've been like a couple times. And the
Was it
ones
in-
that I went to,
Sorry, go on.
yeah, no, the ones that I went to was very small.
And was it online or in person?
It was in person. They do both types of meet and greets and stuff, and they have a. I'm part of their labor council. So they're like divided based upon different issues, and I focus on labor and unions and stuff for them.
That's cool. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm also I talked to a guy from the Industrial World Workers, and talking about doing some external organizing to try to unionize manufacturing, because manufacturing workers, all my spare time that I have, um, but because I think that unions is like one of the biggest mechanisms we have to fight against authoritarianism.
Definitely.
I don't think the oligarchs are gonna just give it back to us. They're just gonna keep taking and taking, and I think the unions are the only really, not the only way, but the biggest mechanism, I think, and most effective mechanism to check them as they're trying to take their power.
Yeah.
Hold on. I'm trying to figure out how many members there are of the Democratic Socialists of America, but
Yeah. I hadn't really thought
honestly
much.
don't know.
I hadn't really thought much about unions one way or the other before I got involved in, running for governor, because, in my town, I don't know a lot of people in unions. I've had a few friends that
Right,
were, but like generally it's not something we talk about that much.
right.
And then, when I started running for governor, especially like hanging out in Manchester, there's a lot of people in unions. And I
Yeah,
learned a lot about how they function in a way that I just really didn't know growing up. I mean, it just was not something that we ever really talked about, or
right.
you never really understood like exactly what the point was. But then as I've been educated, it's like a huge, point of a huge like pressure point that can be used against these big
Oh
corporations.
yeah, it really is, and they don't like it. But for me, so my after I graduated high school, I like worked in manufacturing for like 4 years at a salsa factory, and obviously it wasn't unionized. And then I left that work and I went to education and became a para, and that was my first opportunity to join a union because they have unions in education. And and then I eventually took over the union. But it just seemed like that's where I learned mostly, like, wow, you got somebody, if something happens,
Yeah.
and you need something, that you got somebody you got a team of people that have your back, and they're just there to make sure people get paid for their labor adequately, and to make sure that people have health care and can go to a doctor when they get sick and then can retire with
Yeah.
dignity. That's really the function of unions. I think there's a lot of misinformation, that goes around, but and obviously the people in power don't like
Yeah.
unions. The people benefiting from the system now don't want unions there to change it.
Yeah.
So, I'm hardcore about unions. And my education and my experience has only like, affirmed that, you
Yeah.
know, Yeah. I just think this is what we have to do in order to fight back against the authoritarianism
Totally.
that we're
Yeah.
seeing. That we're seeing.
How do
Plus,
you,
it's just yeah. Go ahead.
sorry, yeah, go on.
No, go ahead.
How do you feel the people of Claremont are feeling about Republicans right now? What do you think their vibe is? Do you think that they are still feeling pretty, because it was funny, there was a poll recently, St. Anselm's poll, and one of the questions on it was, one question was about the economy. Who do you trust more in the economy? And it was
Yeah,
Republicans by like 5 or 10 points. I can't remember. But then it was like, who do you feel more comfortable with addressing affordability? And it was Democrats by 5 or 10 points.
yeah.
So it's like people are still obviously confused about this subject, considering that.
So I think Claremont is a very divided town politically. It is literally straight down the middle, like left, right. Pro Trump, anti Trump, and it can be volatile at times.
Yeah,
I think there's people in Claremont that are still firmly in his corner. Although I will say, this is just some anecdotal things I've been noticing. Like the Trump signs are down.
mm,
Like I don't see them as much as but when it comes to, we just had a school board we had an open school board seat, and there was two options. One was a former educator, and one was basically a free state activist. Those are basically the two choices. And the board was dead heat, 3-3, like tied. And neither of them ended up getting appointed. They actually reappointed the guy who resigned from the seat. It was crazy. Yeah, it happened. It was absolutely insane.
Yeah.
Because they just fell to pressure, I think, and so are people in Claremont souring to Trump? I hope so. If I see more evidence, I'll let you know.
Yeah.
But like I said, he definitely has deep rooted support in Claremont.
Yeah. The other question is how much if they do turn on Trump, how much will they hold Kelly Ayotte responsible for things in Trump's
right?
Because one funny thing about the governor is that, and people don't really realize this, but the governor has like very little power and can do very little on their own. And it's kind of ironic that, I would personally like to do as much as possible as governor and do a lot more like hands-on getting things done with housing as opposed to like just doing the photo ops. But it is kind of funny to me that
the photo ops.
It's a lot of photo ops if you want to be, and it's kind of funny to me that
I appreciate that, John.
People don't really seem to expect a lot from the governor either. They don't really like.
Yeah, and I'll be completely frank and honest with the governor. I think she's honestly one of the most useless governors we've ever had.
Yeah.
To be completely honest with you, even Sununu, who I didn't like either, but I at least think Sununu like tried to do stuff, tried to do policy. Like she doesn't do anything. Like she doesn't promote policy. She doesn't say what she's for. She doesn't, and then she says things that like a Claremont school district has a $5 million deficit. She says things, well, this is a local problem. It's like, no, this is a you problem.
Yeah.
Like you're the governor. Like,
right. This is our problem. This is not. Yeah.
So, I don't know. I think you're right. She's there for the photo ops. She's there for the, it was her turn, Chris was done. She was next in line. I think she's very beatable though. I don't think she's gonna be as hard to take down that Chris was, that Sununu was. I don't think. Yeah. I don't. I think, and I think your approach of wanting to get get your hands in there and get dirty, for lack of a better term, and get stuff done, will contrast to her. You know what I mean? Even for people that might not even be on our side.
Yeah.
John, I do.
Well, thanks, Matt. Our time is at an end, but I really appreciate chatting with you. This is really good insight into what's happening in Claremont. We'll chat soon.
All right. Sounds good, John. Thank you. Great talking to you.
Yeah, thanks. Bye.
Yep.